Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, thanks for having us. My name is Abbey Davis, and I'm the drummer with Oryx.
Hey, I'm Tommy Davis, guitarist, vocalist for Oryx.
And how would you describe the music of Oryx?
Well, we are a mix of things, but we have, just atmospheric sludge metal with some dissonance in there, but also just some doom thrown into. I think we're a mix of genres.
A mix of mostly very slow, very heavy genres, right?
Yeah. Yes, slow and slow. Yeah.
So I spoke to a guy who wrote a book about doom, sludge, and other kinds of slow, heavy music. Do you have any feelings on the difference between doom metal and sludge metal?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I think when I used to think of doom, many years ago, I was thinking corrupted and, much more, darker music. I think doom today has a lot more similarity with like stoner rock. But then I think sludge kind of takes to a darker realm and kind of like entertains the gritty, more nuanced, like darker approach.
My feeling is that a lot of sludge is, or at least the background of the performers, much like Black Flag, they came more from a hardcore background, and sludge was kind of this, almost an act of defiance against, what was prevalent in hardcore at the time, and this kind of antagonistic way of punishing the audiences by playing slower and slower and slower, but also including lots of feedback and dissonance and, some of the stuff that you mentioned. Was doom metal kind of always, it kept the bluesy, Black Sabbath roots of metal, right. And, essentially it's like a genre that never changed, from, 1970 to 1980 to 1990, like these bands more or less always sounded the same, but you kind of see it like infiltrating other scenes, like, death doom bands like Winter or like these gothic metal bands like Paradise Lost or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I've personally been on kind of a quest to better define both genres. I think they're both so like there's so much crossover, and they're both so sort of like can be a bit ambiguous in their own ways, where there's so much crossover with like stoner rock and then with sludge metal there's a lot of subcategories there that kind of cross over. But yeah, I definitely think doom has been, like, you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's a Sabbath worship all day for sure.
Now, would you say there's aspects of that Sabbath worship to your sound, or at least on your earliest recordings?
I think in our roots, yeah, like it's one of those things that's like hard to, not that we want to shake it, but it's kind of like hard to shake, your like foundation. We both grew up on Black Sabbath and a lot of stuff like that from the, 70s type stuff. And I think it's like no matter what we write, it's going to come through in some way. But ultimately, like the quest with Oryx is, it's not necessarily to punish, our goal is not to punish the listener. Like, our goal is to take the listener on a journey, but there is punishment within that journey for sure.
So tell me what led to the two of you forming Oryx.
So we started playing in 2012, a little bit before that, and Tommy was looking for a drummer for his earth/corrupted style of music. And at the time, we were both living in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is a tiny little town that definitely has a scene, or had a scene at the time, but was really kind of focused on punk style. And there was few and in between with like doomier, heavier style musicians, I think. So Tommy had a challenging time finding the right fit for what he was looking for as far as a drummer. I had started playing drums in high school, which was a disaster, I guess. It wasn't anything. It was more punk. Yeah, I was figuring out what I was doing. It was a learning experience. It just was something I was figuring out. So even when I met Tommy and we started playing together, it was kind of learning as I went at that time too. And we started jamming together. It worked, and we were kind of just figuring out what our sound was going to be and what we wanted it to sound like and what kind of our first recording would be. And we did start with a bassist initially, our buddy James Yoakum, but that was short-lived. We figured we wanted to move forward as a two-piece, and it worked for many years after that to be just a two-piece.
So originally formed in New Mexico, you guys ended up moving to Colorado. Why Colorado?
Yeah, we moved to Colorado initially. There was a couple of reasons. A big reason was because I was going to graduate school here, and it was the next step for us from Las Cruces. And then another reason is we've really had connected to the scene in Colorado Springs, the DIY scene there, and played shows there and in Denver as well. So we had started to build friendships with people that were in both scenes and booking shows, and started to come up to play shows from New Mexico in Colorado pretty often. We'd always make sure to come through here on tours. And it just did seem like the next right step for us because of the connections we'd built here. And we really connected to the scene, I think, in both Denver and Colorado Springs, because there is a huge DIY roots formed within both scenes. And it really felt natural. It felt like a natural move for us. It felt like the right move for us. And we weren't really sure what we were going to do after I finished school, but after even being here for even less than a year, it, really felt like the right home for us. And especially for Oryx, even just starting out here, it didn't feel like we had to completely start over. We had met people, we had met bands here. We were able to start playing shows right away, and actually gave us more opportunities to play bigger shows and also to record in bigger recording studios than we had ever had the opportunity to back in New Mexico. So it right away, there's a lot of benefits to moving here. And then we just felt like we fit in right away.
So a DIY scene, but also specifically a lot of doom metal and sludge metal bands, right? Like Primitive Man are from that area, and the Company of Serpents are from that area. Was that part of the appeal?
Yeah, I mean, we connected with bands that were from here. Even when we were living in Las Cruces, we were booking a lot of DIY shows, helping run a DIY venue down there. And there was definitely like a very strong connection with Denver bands and Colorado Springs bands that, another band I would mention is Catheter. They would come down to that area all the time and play shows with Phobia. And there were some like legendary shows at that point, and we really just gravitated towards the scene here in Denver and felt like it was beginning to be our second home and stuff. So like Primitive Man and Serpents, I mean, we definitely, Blighter, Rogog, a lot of the bands from the Springs, it was just this massive community that we felt like we had to be a part of.
So tell me how you guys write songs. What's the process for you guys?
Our process is very collaborative. I mean, we tend to begin constructing with riffs, which, as you mentioned before, is a very doom oriented way of writing, I think. And then, beyond that, we really work on layering, but it's definitely a collaborative experience. We try and really communicate what the feel of the song should be and what we're trying to express.
Yeah, we'll get together, and Tommy is main songwriter, obviously, with writing the guitar parts and the lyrics. And then he'll come up with some riffs. Tommy and I will jam together more often just because our bassist does live in Colorado Springs, which is about an hour away from here for those who aren't familiar with the area. So he'll come up and practice with us. But as far as the writing process too, a lot of it comes from just ideas that are born in the practice space. And I don't play guitar, but I'll have a collaborative, discussion with Tommy about where, I think things should go. And we usually, we can discuss what our ideas are together. And that's been the way since we started playing. We figured out how to communicate with each other of he would give me some ideas of what he was thinking with drums, and I'm giving his, some ideas with what I'm thinking with where vocals are and things like that. So like Tommy's saying, we have always been a really collaborative, we've had a collaborative songwriting process together. And I think that has helped us grow together with our voice as a band.
Does the riff come first?
Yeah, always.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been a very consistent aspect of our songwriting. I think finding a riff that really articulates a feeling is can be a very complex journey. And, I also feel like these songs tend to be, I don't know, like they almost seem to feel like they're almost written in our heads, and we're just trying to articulate what it is that is supposed to be. And some of these puzzle pieces fit together perfectly and others feel like they clash. And so we work with creating through, I think, what is usually a cognitive dissonance, and trying to articulate what angst and all kinds of just, I don't know, viewpoints on our society and things like that. I mean, we just sort of try and funnel that into the articulation of the riff and how to layer that and create an expressive journey there.
I just wanted to add, having Eric join us, our bassist, he really did help evolve, I think, our songwriting process as far as having a third person in and be a voice as to what sounds good and what doesn't. And just having someone, be a part of that. It's, for so long, it was just Tommy and I. So I think you really hear that on our newest record, where Tommy's collaborating with a person who, our bassist Eric, plays guitar as well. That's his first choice with playing. So he's able to work with Tommy in that way where they can riff together, and then that builds, and then the drums come in and the lyrics come in, obviously. But it was really, I think, obvious with this last record, this newest record, that we've had growth having another person to write with us.
I think this album too, I just want to say that on the originating with the riff, our title track on this new album, we really felt strongly that it needed to, in more of a drone direction, be more stripped down. And it was just guitar and synth. And we had contributions from Ethan McCarthy creating noise on top of it. And I really feel like that in and of itself was an articulation of something deep that we felt needed to be in the album, and didn't need necessarily drums or bass or vocals, and just really take a second to just really digest that riff and the darkness by itself.